We have three titles of workshop. First is the practical market analysis of incident response. And then I already have this workshop and also the accessibility. Okay. To the Honorable Patrick C.S. Sumi, Bapak Adi Rumanto, Mr. Adi Wahid, and all the distinguished guests. Welcome to the fourth day of our Bali Conference 2018. For today, we will have three classes of the workshop. But before we go to our workshop, we will have Bapak Jenderal Sri Dato' Panglima Sri Azmi bin Muhammad from Cybersecurity Malaysia to give us an opening speech for this morning. For the Honorable Bapak Jenderal Sri Azmi, this opening speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and a very good morning. Let me begin on behalf of the Permanent Secretariat of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Computer Emergency Response Team, or CERT, thank our host of Code Bali 2018, Badan Cyber dan Sandi Negara Indonesia, and IIT for taking the lead and the initiative to have this first TC workshop as part of Code Bali 2018. It is a commendable effort not only to be benefited directly by all participants in this hall this morning, but also by the 22 member countries of the Organization of Islamic Research, in view of the fact that this training program this morning, the practical packet analysis for incident response, to be conducted by none other than Mr. Adli from APNet, is being live streaming to the other 22 member countries of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Thank you very much to Badan Cyber dan Sandi Negara Indonesia, especially Pak Rudi from IIT for taking this lead and initiative. It is testimony of our continued efforts to reach out, to enhance our capacity building, to be more learned, and to know what's out there in terms of the latest initiatives in the cyber domain. So, ladies and gentlemen, with the lafaz Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let us now proceed with the first TC workshop entitled Practical Packet Analysis for Incident Handling. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for Bapak General Andri Azmi. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as the Bapak General Azmi said before, that our first TC workshop today will be live streaming to the 22 members of OIC CERT around the world. So it will be so special for today because not only the participant in here, but also the other participant from another country will be listening with us this morning until the end of the workshop. Yeah, Before we're going to the main agenda, I will announce about the room for the workshop itself. For the Brunei room, we will have the first workshop, which is the practical market analysis of incident response. And in this zone, beside this room, we will have a data security, and in the Amnesia room on the second floor, we will have the IoT hands-on workshop with this the Aris and Mr. So that's all for the opening of the logistics workshop. I would like to say so if there's anything to say. Thank you so much for Bapak Rudi, Bapak Azumi, and for all the participants. Please enjoy the workshop. Thank you.
Do I need the mic? Maybe. All right, so I guess first things first, those who are not in this classroom can go to your classes, your other classes. So this will be practical packet analysis for incident response responders. We have two other ongoing sessions, IoT security and there's also DNS. And in this room, we will be doing practical packet analysis with Wireshark mostly. All right, so let's give it a couple of minutes. Let me just put my slides up there. There you go. Okay, while waiting for that, there you go. So I'll be using the mic in the morning because my voice is not at 100%. So maybe after a while I'll get rid of the mic. But as you have heard just now, that this is training on packet analysis. So I hope that we have more or less people who are interested to look at packets and play around with them for a little bit. There's about 4 to 5 labs today, including a group exercise. So be prepared to maybe get busy. But if you just want to stay in here and do office work, that's fine as well. I'm okay with that. So who am I? My name is Adli. I work at APNIC, Asia Pacific Network Information Center. Any of you here have heard of APNIC before? Or have not heard of APNIC before? Not heard? Yeah, so if you do some form of incident analysis or forensics, then maybe when you deal with IP addresses, at some point you will need to look up where the IP address is or who it belongs to, right? And normally what you will do then is query the WHOIS database. And by WHOIS database here, I mean the number WHOIS database, because there's also the domain name WHOIS databases, .com, .org, right? But if you have an IP address, or even if you have an AS number, I want to know if, for example, this IP address belongs to, which network operator. Is it Telkomsel? Is it, Axiata? Is it Telstra? So I want to know where it is so that I can then contact the network operator and ask them to take the necessary action. So APNIC manage IP addresses, and therefore we do the WHOIS database registry. So I've been there for about 5 years, and prior to that, I was with MUFG CERT, which is a bank in Japan, and I used to be with the Malaysia CERT a while back ago. So doing incident response and managing security teams and with the current role at first, doing a lot of engagement, promoting best practices, building capacity, doing promotion of certain activities. So yesterday, as you may heard from my presentation, I'm part of the first communities. So a lot of information sharing taking place, a lot of engagements in different parts of the world. So that's pretty much it. I hope that we will have time to get to know one another. I will not do the traditional introduction in the morning. Maybe after the tea break, we'll go quick round. Who's who in the room, so that we can have more people, and hopefully we can get to know one another. And don't treat this session as a one-off, which means that we see each other once and then we disappear and we forget about it. But hopefully we can have more fruitful engagement after the session. I'm on LinkedIn, so please connect to me there. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram if you want to see my photos, but no selfies. Okay, so I'm informed that many other people are joining us remotely as well. So I'm looking at the camera to say hello, whoever is there. Yeah, if you're awake, welcome to Bali. This is a very beautiful place. Lots of nice beaches and all that. So about this particular class, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight first. So the course content actually comes from this organization called ENISA. So I've been doing this many times, and I find the content is very, very useful and practical, especially for those who are quite new. Not so new in dealing with Wireshark, but new in doing incident response. Because there's a lot of interesting angles to look at when we are analyzing packets. This workshop is what I call a guided workshop. What that means is that you're going to be doing most of the work, right? So I'm just going to guide you, ask you questions, but you have to actually do the stuff to be able to enjoy it, right? So maybe I'll do some demos and here and there during the course, but trust me, you will enjoy more if you actually try to do it. Because it is a guided workshop, those of you who are already advanced probably will may be able to finish this quicker, right? So you can do two things if you finish early. One, you can go to the beach. Number two, you can hang around and maybe help others who are struggling or who need some help, and so on and so forth. Because as you can see, this is a huge class. It's not possible for me to walk around to see everyone. So anyone who wants to help, they're more than welcome to do so. And hopefully by doing that, then people can know you, and you can also feel good about yourself by helping others. But if you want to go to the beach, I have no problem with that. We want to have a lot of discussion, so there's different kinds of expertise in the room, right? So throw questions, ask questions to one another. That's fine, and we really want to encourage that. Now, the thing about the class is that when you finish, you're going to ask one question, right? Or you have many questions, but one of the questions that you will ask is there a better way to do this, right? So the short answer is yes, right? In real life, we don't really spend that much time like what we will do today, but today is just more getting ourselves familiar with the tools, with options that are available, looking at different cases and all that. But in reality, if you are a real security response team, handling a lot of security incidents, right, you will want a lot of automation, right? So maybe the whole day class exercise can be finished in maybe half an hour in real life, right? Or an hour maximum, right? But I think we want to go through the process of looking at the stuff, asking questions, and then coming up with a report or presenting the information to stakeholders that doesn't understand anything about security. So we want to experience that process. And that's why the class will take a bit longer. But like I said, in reality, a lot of this stuff, you have a lot of automated tools, you run it, it gives you a report, and you're done, you go back to sleep, right? So that's pretty much it about this, about the class. I should highlight the classrooms. I know this room is full of hackers and, computer security geeks. So number one, do not disrupt others in the room, right? So I know you can hack the Wi-Fi, I know you can hack each other's laptop, but we're not going to do that today, right? We'll save that for the competition, for the CTF. I will be passing a USB stick with the VM. right? This is very clean. Trust me, there's no malware here. But the point is, there is a virtual machine in this USB which I want you to install and load on VirtualBox. Some of the packet traces do contain some malware, right? So I want you to be careful so that you are sure, right? You are safe, so that you only load the packets inside virtual machine, right? You can do it on your own laptop if you want to, but it's a bit risky. If you can handle the risk, it's fine with me. But don't complain or don't accuse me if suddenly your AV starts making noise. If you run it natively on your laptop. So best practice is that we run everything in the virtual machine. If you don't want to, it's up to you. But I'm just highlighting that the risk of that there is some traces of malware inside some of the packets that we will be looking at today. So let's be safe. And I think if you're doing training, this is one of the best practices as well. We load everything in the VM so that people don't get their machines infected. Okay. How many of you here have VirtualBox already installed on your computer? Not yet. Okay. So in the USB stick, there is the executable for you to install things on your laptop, or hopefully you have the relevant privilege on your machine to be installing that. We will take our time to do that in a bit. As I said earlier, I posted it here as well. You can find some of the course materials as well. So the slides that we will go through and the labs, they are already posted there on the site or Google Drive. Hopefully the remote participants can see the link if you want to download the stuff. So there should be a lot of Word documents, right? So it's in the lab folder as well as a PDF version of the slides that we will be using today. All right, everybody got a copy of that? All right, it's here as well. And it's there. Any question before we get started? Any questions? So this is going to be the fun part, which is distributing the USB stick. Hopefully it can be done quickly, but don't worry about it. So I have 7 USB stick. I don't know what algorithm we should use to distribute this, but maybe one for this row. Yeah. And then 2 here. Okay, so this line here. And then don't see the USB stick. You can have it later to ask a question, but don't see it yet. And then can people access Google Drive? All right. This browser is redirecting the traffic to Yahoo. So all right, so I have distributed the USB, right? Try to copy it. It's about too big. Okay. And in the next few slides, right? In the next few slides, as we are going through the introductions and all that, try to do the installation. So hopefully by coffee break, we will have everyone copying the VirtualBox and all that. But don't worry if you are not able to do that. We will try to sort it out. We have a long day ahead of us. Any questions? So anything missing from the USB stick? Did you get an empty one? No? Yours is empty? Yeah.
My laptop doesn't have USB port.
So this one is USB-C enabled as well. So yeah, I can pass it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't have the traditional USB port, at the back there's a USB connector, USB-C connector to it. So yeah, so we think of every possible situation. So copy that. I think we're so far so good. So we're gonna use VirtualBox. The OVA image, I believe, can be imported in VMware. So if you have that, you can give it a go. It should work, I think. But the one that I have running on my laptop is VirtualBox. So copy the image, OVA, import it on VirtualBox. On some computers, you just double click on the OVA and it will install it. One warning, right, is that because the virtual machine is an Ubuntu based VirtualBox, right? Do not perform any update or upgrade on it right now, right? Because you're going to screw a few things up, right? Especially we have one or two vulnerable services that we want to test. So if you update that, then you cannot do one of the exercises that we will do later on, right? So I did this mistake yesterday while playing with my virtual machine, and I forgot to do a snapshot. So what you want to do maybe as well is maybe do a snapshot when you install, so that if you mess it up at some point, you can always have the original copy. So don't perform any upgrade or update. I know some of you are sysadmin and you have this instinct to update everything every time, right? Okay, we good? Everyone is following me? Yes? All right. Okay, so this is today's motto, right? Today's mantra, as we say, right? So we say PCAP or it didn't happen, right? So in security, sometimes a lot of things happen, and people are always asking, is it true? Did you see this? How did it happen, right? So people want validation, right? So I'll give you a story. All of you have heard of WannaCry, right? The WannaCry ransomware, which is a very famous one. A lot of us heard about the malware on a Friday night as we are already going home or about to go home, right? So there's a lot of news about WannaCry, that it's spreading very quickly, it's affecting this kind of system, that kind of system, and so on and so forth, right? Then one person asked a question, right? How did it spread? Right? So some people say, oh, maybe it spread through email, maybe it spread through this, through the network, and so on and so forth. The next question is, do you have any evidence of this? Right? Can I see the email? Can I see the attachment? Can I see the packets? Right? Can I see any traces that you have? Because people want validation. So it's good to know about the problem, that we have a big problem that exists, but without any evidence, we cannot provide detailed action plan. Right? So do we block the ports? Do we update the servers? Do we add rules to our firewall? Do we block this domain or that domain? So we need evidence, right? So one thing that is used amongst the search as a primary evidence, right, are network traffic, PCAPs, right? So PCAP is the format of the network traffic, basically. And this is what is being used a lot. So you will see stickers like this, or logos like this. Where it says PCAP or it didn't happen, right? If you don't have the PCAP, then you can talk about anything, but I won't believe you until I can show you, or I can see the actual data that is in it. All right. So that's basically the sentiment that we want to have during this course. Like I said, we have a few side goals, right? So this course is not just about looking at PCAPs, or it's not just looking at Wireshark or how to use it. There are other things that I want you to think about, right, when you are doing this course. And I'm sure that people here are off at different levels when it comes to skills and knowledge about either network security or network fundamentals itself, right? So when you look at some of the things that were discussed, then maybe you can reflect on how strong are you when it comes to networking. People probably understand how the internet works and all that. But when we look at the packets, then we start to realize that there are maybe lots of protocols that we are not really aware of, or features of those protocols. When you look at an incident, then you probably want to reflect or think about how do we then monitor effectively, right? So in this particular course, the PCAP is given to you already. Someone have collected it somewhere, right? But if you were to do this yourself, like if you want PCAPs on your own, where do you actually do it, right? And what's the most effective way to do that? And number two, how do you, deal with some of the challenges with collecting PCAPs, for example? Right? So we'll talk a bit about that later on. Number three, after you do an analysis, right? What you want to do is actually use that information to improve detection or to do detection, right? So I do all this analysis and I figure out, where the command and control is, where the malicious domain is. I know the tactics that is being used. It's a drop-by download, right? And the originating point is a particular website. But how do I translate all of that into a detection? Oh, can you just pass it around? Oh, it's done. Wow, you guys are quick. Are you sure you copied the right file? So, how do we then improve detection, right? In our organization, in our country, right? Regionally or globally, right? So as a CERT community, sometimes we think global. I have a piece of information that I want to share with the rest of the CERT community from around the world, and my goal is to improve detection, either an existing attempt to attack or an existing compromise, right? That is, actively happening on the network. So I want to detect that very, very quickly. So how do you then scale that into, sharing that? And of course, think about the whole, end-to-end about doing investigation. So in our class, like I said, we will use Wireshark and maybe some other tools if you want. But let's just today focus on Wireshark, and we'll look at different case studies. Okay, quick one on packet analysis. Why packet analysis? I said earlier that things happen on the network, and therefore, if we are able to capture the packet or the traces, we can do a bit more investigation. A lot of things take place on the network in the form of client-server communication. One machine talking to a server, interacting, downloading files, requesting things. Right? If you think about applications, they exist on the network, right? So the web, the DNS, the email, the video, the voice. What that means as well is that all these applications do carry the content within the packets. Whether or not you can see it is a different question, but that content is there in a packet, right? If it's encrypted, maybe you're not able to see it, or you must, you can see the content at the termination point, but the content is inside those packets, right? And if you think about some of the security technologies that we have, like IDS, for example, they rely on the content, right? Among other things. Also on destination, IP address, source, and things like that. When you think about internet or packets on the network, right? Don't forget about the bad guys, right? So the bad guys who are attacking the infrastructure, spreading malware, spreading spam, trying to steal your money, right? They all operate on the same internet that we operate on, right? So what that means is that they use the internet to manage or set up their own infrastructure, right? So they set up their own servers, they set up their own, proxies, they set up their own, databases, right? Their own management interface for managing botnets. So they are on the internet as well, right? So doing packet analysis could allow you to understand or uncover the infrastructure that is related to the bad guys. So some of us are in that world where we want to pursue the criminals, not just to understand what just happened, but also to pursue, where are they setting up their servers? How can they move around so quickly? What techniques do they use to store their payloads and their goods and things like that? So understanding miscued infrastructure, to me, was one of the motivation why I was really keen into doing this work in the past. Right? A lot of the attacks that we see over the network also tend to abuse the protocols, right, that we use on a day-to-day basis. Right? So if you study packets and you look into packets that are being captured, then it can reveal some of the weaknesses, some of the vulnerabilities that are in the protocol itself, right? And therefore, if you can understand this, maybe we can then improve the protocols to make it more secure. Okay, so question for you all, right? If you want to improve, let's say, a protocol that we use a lot, like HTTP, right? HTTP is a very popular protocol, right? Without it, we can't use the internet. Or without it, it's hard for developers to develop web applications, right? So one day, let's say you find a vulnerability in the protocol, right? Where can you go to improve this? Or who can you reach out to tell them that, hey, I found a vulnerability and I would like to propose that the protocol be changed a little bit so that it is more secure? Who do we talk to? What community do we go to? Who makes all these protocols for web, for voice, for emails? IEEE, close. ISO standards, what is it? IETF, right? So for the correct answer, I'll give you a present. So it's a malware free USB stick, as I said. But only 8 people. Yeah. So IETF is a community, right, that talks about protocols, basically. People propose stuff, and I'm sure you have heard of RFCs, right? Request for comments. Right? And the standards or the standards then is being used by people who want to develop applications, so they will refer to it. So that means that everybody is working along the same lines, right? Make sure that we understand, how the thing is supposed to work, what are the proposals, and from time to time you see a lot of improvements. So you see a lot of attacks that abuse protocols because of the inherent vulnerabilities in those protocols, and sometimes changing protocols take a lot of time, but also for people to implement changes in the protocols, that will take time as well. So that's, I think, another interesting aspect to think about. When you do packet analysis, you get a lot of information. So I guess that's one of the reasons why we do this as well. Right? We want to uncover certain things like, where is the source of the attack? Where is it coming from? Internal, external, right? What if it's behind a net, right? What else can we do to get those information? Location could be an interesting thing, right? So where is the attack coming from? Which AS or autonomous system or network, right? Do we see a trend, right? Do we see a lot of attacks coming from those places? And why is that so? Who can we talk to fix that particular problem? Right? Is the attack a one-off attack, or is it associated with the campaigns, right? Or a run of, attempt to do certain things over a short period of time? So we call that campaigns, right? So is it by the same attacker? And are they targeting for something specific this round, right? Or is it not related, right? Are we looking at something very unique, something very targeted, right? Something very advanced, or not so advanced sometimes, right? So are we looking at all this information, and information about reputation, like when was the last time someone see anything evil coming from this source, for example? So then we talk about things like reputation. And I think if you are a CERT or if you are an incident responder, the next item is of importance to you, right? So after learning all of this, what action can we take, right? Do we fix it, or do we tell people to fix it? For example, if you do some analysis on maybe some drive-by download malware, you'll find, for example, where the infection points are, right? And these tend to be normally some very weak site that people visit, and you have to tell the owner to fix the situation because your site is being abused and traffic are being misdirected to different places. So you need to fix it so that the vulnerability or the weaknesses cannot be repeatedly exploited by miscreants or criminals. You want to be able to stop the attack, right? So if something like WannaCry, right, you want to stop it from spreading further, for example, right? So what do we do? What can we do? We can blacklist the IP, for example, or block the port, or blacklist the domain name, right? or if you can find a kill switch, right? That was the case of WannaCry. Someone found a kill switch so that it will, it will not infect further. Or, we cannot do anything about it, but we can still deny access to things. Right? So packet analysis is interesting in all this respect. And, like I said, people in this room could be doing it for different reasons. So people like to talk about framework, and I think I would like to keep it simple. When it comes to framework for doing analysis, you just do two things. One is capture, second is analyze. Capturing packets, in some community, this is known as sniffing, right? Although I think if you use sniffing, it sounds a bit negative, right? So we say capture packets. We can capture everything, right? Or we can be selective. So I can say, capture all packets that my network interface sees. Right? So I can capture all of that and then, perform analysis later on. Or I can be selective. I want to see only web traffic. So I capture anything that my network interface see, but only related to maybe ATM 443. And I'm assuming that many web traffic will go, will be using port 80 or 443 as their destination, right? So I can be very selective. Or I can say, I just want to see UDP packets. I'm analyzing DNS, right? Although DNS do operate on TCP, I want to explore the TCP options of the DNS. So I can be very selective, right? Format-wise, it's PCAP, right? And when it comes to capturing packets, your perspective, where you are capturing things could be very interesting, right? So, for example, right now, if you run Wireshark in in sniffing mode, packet capture mode, do you think you can see packets that is going to all the computers in this room or the network? You will not be able to do that, right? You can only see traffic that is coming to you or leaving your computer, and maybe some broadcast packets and all that. But you will not be able to see everything, right? So placing the sensor or the sniffer in certain location, right, is a critical factor. So it depends on the type of traffic, the type of application. So your placement affect the visibility, as we say, right? So the next thing in the framework is, after capture, right? So if you're not able to capture, then the question is, where can I get these packets? So in the CERT community, sometimes you'll see people asking around, anyone has any capture of this, right? Can I have a look? Can you give me a copy? Right. So sometimes when it comes to capturing packet, people try to reproduce the incident. So if it's a malware infection, we try to infect a computer with a piece of malware and see what traffic is generated from it. So people have a small lab that they set up, that they can infect a virtual machine, see traffic, capture it, and then do analysis on it. Right? So I can try to reproduce the packet capture. Right? In the analysis section, right? Again, to me, it's very straightforward. What we do is we try to answer a lot of questions. Right? So what is happening? What is going on? What happened? Right? In this incident, what happened? Where did it take place? Where is the source? Where is the victim? Right? Where is the command and control? Where is the payload being stored at? Right? When did it happen? Right? You may get a report about an incident today. Right? So somebody said that, hey, I think my network has been compromised because I see some funny things on the computer screen. Right? So the report came in today, right? But do we know when the incident actually happened? We don't know yet, right? But we want to know, when did it happen? Did it happen yesterday? While we were at the conference and one of the CTF champions hacked into our machine, right? Or did it happen 30 days ago when I was in the office, right? Or when I was at home, right? So that's a huge gap, right? If it happened 30 days ago and yesterday, so there's a lot of action that needs to be done, right? If I know when things actually happen. If it happened a long time ago, then I can say that, hey, I think there's a possibility that all of your information has been compromised, right? Or we may want to have access to other artifacts to investigate whether or not this attack is just on your computer or it has widespread or it has spread into your internal networks or to some other machines, right? Was the attacker able to pivot and go to another location or whatnot? So when is an important question, right? So from the packet traces, we can also see sequence of events, right? When did I go to the website? When was I misdirected or redirected? When did I download the stuff, right? When do I see an outbound connection that could be associated with something that I downloaded, right? So the whens are very, very important, right? How, right? So in a lot of cases, sometimes, especially as incident responder, people explain to us what happened, what just happened, right? But we don't have the full story. We don't have the how, right? Did it spread through email initially, right? So the question is, how did you get infected? He said, we don't know. Adli was, distributing USB stick. I put it in. Then the next day, my computer was compromised, right? So was it from the USB stick, from APNIC USB stick, or is it from a website that you browse, right? While you were trying to check in to your flight, and then there's an ad there, and then that ad, has some malware on it, and you got infected through the browser. So how did it happen, right? Because otherwise it will be just speculation. Maybe through email, maybe through USB stick, maybe through a website, maybe through, I don't know, some other way. So how is very, very important, right? And I think when it comes to investigation, that's the detail that you would want before you issue an advisory, right? So that you can tell people, hey, we see this malware happening or spreading or infecting a computer. It spreads through email, and therefore, please don't just click on any attachments, right? Or run an AV through all incoming emails so that those malicious attachments are quarantined, right? And from our analysis, we can see that the malware is a known malware. So if you had the right tools on your computer, then you will not be infected in the first place, right? So knowing the details, right, will allow you to issue more useful advisories, right? Because sometimes the advisories that we see, they're not practical at all, right? So for example, can you tell people, if you're afraid of malware, don't use the internet, right? Can we say that? Well, probably you shouldn't, right? But sometimes the advice is so general that people say, okay, what am I supposed to do here? All right, now going to the next one is who, right? So a lot of us here, especially if you're with a CERT or with a security research team, you deal with a lot of incidents and you're like, who are the people behind these attacks, right? I really want to know, because I'm tired of playing, firefighting, for example, right? Analysis, advisory, report, and all that. But, let's catch the bad guys, right? Obviously, I'm not a law enforcement agency, so it's not my job to do that. But sometimes I wonder, right? And we can extract this information from our analysis, right? Or we piece together some information, and we say, hey, policeman, or police person, policewoman, we have some information with a high level of confidence that, this attack is being run by this particular group, and we suspect that they are in this particular location, right? So there are groups of people that go into that, right, as well. So maybe not us here, or maybe we are, but some of the things that we want to answer is who, right? The actor. So doing some attribution and all that. So when we do packet analysis, all these questions come to our minds. And like I said, if you're a CERT, then you will have some outputs, like in terms of advisory, how to detect, right, and how to prevent, right? So if you look at analysis, the first thing is, telling a story. So look at packet, tell me what you see, right? Tell me what information you have picked up. The second thing is there anything useful that you can advise me from the information that you have received? I think it's a very straightforward framework, right? Okay, any questions so far? I think it's not that complicated yet. Okay, all right, so I've covered this already, what we're gonna do, desired outcome. Yep, so I think I will just share this quickly, right? I think you have a copy of the slides if it's too small, right? So this is an example of telling a story, right? So from the PCAPs, you will not get a nice graph like this, right? You have to kind of draw it yourself, right? So Wireshark will not produce this for you. But what I want to show you here is that when you are looking at PCAPs or network traffic, in our case today, right? You're trying to build a story, right? And sometimes you can say that, oh, this piece of information is not in the PCAP. I need to go to the host, right? I need to see some logs, right? I need to see the actual DNS logs or the queries being made, right? For you to build a picture like this. Some of this information, like I said, can be obtained from the package itself, but maybe a lot of them cannot be seen there. Right? Some of the complementary information that we can extract is probably from the computer memory. If the host is still being infected, maybe I can dump the memory, right, dump the RAM to see what is currently being executed on the machine. What's the process name, right? The process name will probably not be in the PCAP, right? But I have that piece of information. What file does it write to on a disk, for example? That's on the host itself, on the infected machine. So the point is, you can build a story, right? And that's, I think, the main thing that we want to get out from this course is build a story from things that we are looking at, right? By answering questions. Okay, any question? Nope? Good. All right, so I'm going to skip some of this because I think we've covered it. Why PCAP? So if you're looking at a PCAP, you can actually get a lot of information, right, from the different layers of the OSI model, for example, right? And some of it can be useful, some of them are not so useful. Some of them just additional technical details or noise, maybe not the things that you are actually looking at. One thing I think when you are dealing a lot with PCAPs, you get a bit more involved or more understanding in the application itself, right? And there are some other interesting use cases, right? Again, building up on the analysis part. We can be very specific in the questions that we ask, right? So, for example, is there a rogue DHCP server, right? Are there evidence of malicious activities, right? Can we follow the trace or the tracks left by an attacker? Passive DNS resolutions, things that have been queried before, and we have a capture of that. So there's a lot of use cases for doing this kind of work. Who uses PCAP? So a lot of us here are incident responders, perhaps, but there are also other communities that uses this, right? Like system administrators, they probably use something like TCP dump or Wireshark as well to troubleshoot, but not necessarily looking for security problems, right? Analysts, administrators, and so on. Of course, you, right? I mentioned a bit about collecting PCAPs, right? So this is where things can be interesting. Like I said, it's all about perspective, where you collect them. One very, very, very common option among security researchers is, again, like I said, building their own labs, trying to reproduce the traffic, and then capturing the PCAPs, in a virtual environment. That's one thing. But what if you have to capture traffic in a live network, right? So this is where things get interesting, because it is not just about perspective, where you put it, right? So some switches do have ports that you can plug into, and you get a copy of all the traffic that goes through the routers, for example, right? Or through the switch, and you can dump it, right? But also the issue with that is, how big of a bandwidth are we looking at, right? And how much disk space do you have, right? Because like I said earlier, right, the package contains content, and content is huge. So let's say you're trying to capture packets, and there is like 20 people in the room, right? Or 20 people in that network, and they're all streaming video on YouTube or Netflix and things like that, right? And you are doing this for an hour. And how much space do you think you will need? For 20 people who are watching a movie for an hour, right? So obviously that's a lot of space, right? But if these 20 people are just using IRC, do you guys know what IRC is? I see that this is a very young generation. Maybe you don't know what IRC is. Maybe this is WhatsApp and Telegram, generation. So if they're using IRC, which is a very effective way of communicating, right? But very low, low intensity in terms of data usage, right? So you're just sending ASCII characters, no pictures, maybe ASCII pictures, but occasionally some files that we exchange. That's not that big, right? So I can watch for like hours. I can capture for hours, right? And you know, the hard disk requirement is very limited. The other aspect is probably not just in terms of, you know, the intensity of the exchanges that took place. What if, for example, you are trying to capture packets and you are in a location where you are seeing the encrypted version of the traffic, right? You are in the middle, you are a man in the middle, right? A person in the middle, right? So you capture for hours and hours and hours, and you can see I have a lot of data, right? But you are not able to see the content because they are all encrypted by the application. So like HTTPS, right? You can get some information like destination and source, because those information are not encrypted, right? So you can see that. You can probably figure out how big, you know, of information was being sent back and forth. You can see the port numbers, but those are just metadata, right? Those are high-level data, which you can still get without even capturing the packets using PCAP techniques, right? You can see net flows and things like that, right? So you can watch, but you cannot see what's inside, right? You have some information, but you don't have the full picture. So perspective is quite interesting and quite important to understand. Another option is sometimes people have an inline device, right? So I have a target that I want, you know, to see what's going in and out, right? And I put something in between, right? And anything that comes through me, I'm able to pick up and save, right, for my later analysis. So that's another thing to consider. Sometimes the tool themselves have limitations. So Wireshark or TCP dump, you know, there is a limitation of how big of a file that they can open, right, before, you know, they freeze. So there are other tools that we can use, you know, for large scale, you know, analysis. So maybe we'll talk about that at the end of the day, right? When it comes to packet analysis, you know, I think there's a question of being ethical as well. Of course, as a security practitioner, as an incident responder, people trust you, right? So when they give you a sample, a piece of artifact, you know, they trust that you will do the right thing, that you will not maybe expose them or abuse the information that you have received, right? So for example, someone sent me a PCAP file and I see a lot of telnet traffic, right? What's the problem with telnet? Right? So the problem with telnet is that everything is in plain text. The username, password that is being exchanged, right? Commands are being typed, right? So if I am an incident responder and I'm supposed to do some analysis on, you know, some other things, right? I see all this information and then I take it and I go and hack the server myself, right? Is that a good thing? No, it's not, right? So as a security practitioner, you are sometimes exposed to a lot of confidential or sensitive information, right? And especially if you're doing with PCAPs, you can see a bunch of other things. So one of the things that I normally see, and you will see this later on in some of our examples, given a PCAP, I can build the entire network diagram, right? I'm not just looking at one host talking to another host. I can actually see other hosts on the network, you know, through broadcast packets and all that. And I can probably, you know, print a network diagram that is very accurate about the network, the internal network of this person that shared me with the PCAPs, right? So you have access to those information, and I think this is why you have to be very ethical, right? In terms of one, making sure that you don't divulge this information to other parties unnecessarily or without permission, and number two, you should take care of that PCAP because it contains a lot of sensitive information, right? So information that shouldn't be leaked, information that shouldn't be shared. And this is why you will find probably already that there are websites where you can upload a PCAP and it will do some analysis for you, right? So if you have a PCAP and you don't have any Wireshark skills or TCP dump skills, there are websites out there that say, hey, you know, upload your PCAP to us and we'll tell you what we see in it. Those sites are very good, no doubt, very, very useful. I sometimes use them, but I will make sure that there's no sensitive information in the PCAP, right? Because it may contain a lot of sensitive stuff that you capture by accident. Like say, you know, you run Wireshark on your machine, right? And you think that you're just capturing, you know, certain traffic, but you are capturing everything else. And those things may contain sensitive information, like your email, for example, And you don't want this information to be in the hands of a third party whom you don't know what they will do with that information. If they don't do anything malicious with it, that's fine, but what if they do? So you have to be careful about that, no? Just be sure. So that's the general warning, right, that I have on this. I think we'll skip this easy exercise, but maybe we'll talk about, you know, some quick tools like hardware. So if you are in the network industry, right, you do some work on the network, you probably have come across taps, right, where you can, you know, put traffic in and then, you know, plug in your monitoring device or your laptop with or a server with Wireshark or TCP dump running or some other tools, right, and get a copy of those things. So, you know, you don't disrupt the flow, and you can capture what's going on through this network, right? Again, visibility is an important issue, where you place it, right? So let's say your network is comprised of many subnets and subdomains and things like that, right? And you use NAT heavily, right? So if you position your tab or your monitor at a certain location, you may also only see the public IP addresses, but you don't see, you know, what is being assigned internally, right? So you may have to either, you know, have a record of who uses what IP address, how addresses are being translated, or have different placement of the sensors in different locations, right? So that's one thing. I mentioned about inline devices, where basically you put yourself in the middle, right? Those who are probably doing CTFs are probably aware of how you can actually force this to happen, right? Without putting yourself physically in the middle, right? Maybe some of the old switches allow you to do, you know, an ARP cache poisoning and things like that, where you kind of tell everybody to send traffic to you, and then you forward it out, right? So, but that's another tutorial. So things like this can happen, and it allows you to see packets in the network. Maybe some numbers. Okay, so what are we talking about when we talk about you know, the amount of traffic that we need to capture, right? So let's say, you know, you have 1 gig of traffic, you know, that's the max, right? And you want to do, you know, monitoring for a certain period of time, right? So for 24 hours, for example, right? So be prepared to, you know, store that kind of information. So that's a lot of stuff, right? Of course, some organizations have this capability, so, you know, storage is not an issue. But, you know, PCAP takes a lot of space, a lot of information, right? Any questions so far? Ready for coffee break? No? All right. So maybe before we go for coffee break, which is what time should we break for coffee? Maybe 10:30? Yeah, 10:15, 10:30. Okay, a few more minutes. All right. So, how many of you here have used Wireshark before? Actually, no, don't be shy. Why do you keep your hand low? You keep your hand low, so it's not a full. Yes, I've used it. It's like, yeah, I kind of used it. So, how many of you have used it before? Right? I think it's a popular tool. Everybody probably have used it at some point. At least open it, right? To see, oh, this is Wireshark. I thought, right? Any Wireshark user here? Wireshark? Yeah, quite a bit. No, I think it's useful if you raise your hand so that I can seek your help if I need help, right? If I need to assign you to someone later on. So, okay, we have some people. How many of you here have not used it at all in your life before? At all? Okay, well, so everyone have used it, yeah? At some point, okay. Anyone here have not heard of Wireshark before coming to this class? All right, so, okay, so we are in the same spot. Anyone here have used Ethereal? Huh? Ethereal user. Only 1 and 2, so I can guess their age. They must be very old, right? So Ethereal is the original name of Wireshark, right? So if you have used Ethereal, I think you're probably in your 40s or 50s. Maybe you're still young, but you look old or something like that. Okay. So Wireshark is a very powerful tool, right? It's open source, that's why it's great. And you know, it's used for a lot of things, right? Capturing packets, number one, but may be useful for capturing packet on a small scale, right? Maybe. Right? Analyzing packets, that's great. Filtering packets, you get a lot of traffic, you just want to filter or see what you need. Saving and manipulating packets. Search use this sometimes. When we want to share the PCAP to another party, we modify a few things inside the packets to hide the innocent, right? Or to protect the innocent. So we say that, you know, I've changed the IP address so that it doesn't reflect the actual network. You can do that with Wireshark. You can use Wireshark to export content from a packet. So you can color packets for analysis and so on and so forth. So I can say that this is like the Microsoft Office for network analyst, right? So because, you know, it's a very useful tool. It's got a lot of features. New features are being added. There's also a Wireshark conference annually and workshops. So it's an active community of people who are contributing to improve the software. And there are also a lot of people who are finding new use cases for using the tool. So I guess if you are in security and you need a tool for doing packet analysis, then probably you should be good at Wireshark, right? As one of the tools in your pocket, right? You have a lot of tools that you know, so Wireshark should be in your pocket as well as a go-to tool for performing some analysis for your work, right? I'll skip some of this, so you can find out more about it. I just want to show some interesting screenshots. Yeah, so I think immediately when we start using the tool, right? When you open Wireshark, then you will see this window, right? So generally, right, or by default, it is divided into 3 panes, right? Top, middle, bottom, right? So what you see at the top is the list of packets. So each, you know, so when you have a capture, you have a lot of packets. The packets can be numbered, right? So the first pane on the top is always the packet list. You will hear me a lot, or in the tutorial, you will see a lot of references to the packet number, right? So each packet that you have, there's a number column. So I say, look at packet 201, right? So you just go and select that packet, or search for that packet, right? If you select a packet, right, a line, you can see the details, right? It breaks down into the protocols that are seen in that packet, right? So I skipped the whole OSI layer and internet layer, whatever, but you will see that here, right? In the packet details, you will see, you know, there's an ARP, there's TCP, you know, there's port number inside TCP. There is, you know, there's no port number in TCP, there's IP, right? There is TCP, and then in TCP there's application, and inside the application you see the protocols, the commands in the application. So you see the breakdown of those packets inside, you know, inside the packet details, which is interesting, right? If you're bored, I think you should play with Wireshark more, right? And at the bottom, right, you see the packet bytes. So you see the conversion of the details into into bits and bytes. Okay, some useful features, of course, you know, for capturing packets. It's very easy. I think you will see this right away. If you want to capture packets, you know, there is just go to the window and then look for packet interface, and then you can start. You can choose from which interface you wanna play from, and you know, start capturing packets, right? Normally, what people do is maybe capture packets. As soon as you capture packets, you can see live packet capture being captured, right? But that can be a very useless exercise if you have a lot of packets. So you just want to ignore all of that, and then, you know, then save. Then you start looking into the packet details. So there are many options, right? Again, my goal is to, when we do the exercise, we get to actually see this in detail. So I'm not going to describe it in a lot of details here. You can specify like what kind of packets you want to capture. So I say, you know, just any destination 80, destination 443, or just capture all DNS packets, right? Or all TCP packets, or all UDP packets, or all ARP packets. Or you can say DNS and something else. Capture packets that is not from source 10.1.1.1. So you can, build, a filter so that you capture the packets that you want, right? Or you can just capture everything and then filter when you do the analysis. Yeah, so there's some fancy stuff like that, looking at signals and all that. Probably will not be using any of that at the moment, right? Analyzing packets, again, you can do, very detailed packet analysis. So a lot of the protocols that we see today on the internet do have a plugin for Wireshark, right? So they are dissected really, really well, right? So it's very, very interesting. Sometimes you can see protocols that you are not dealing with on a day-to-day basis, right? So details of for example the IP packet, right? All the source information, the checksum, the TTL, right? So everything inside an IP packet, information inside an IP packet can be shown or can be visible to us. So we can see, for example, if the what version of IP is being used, v6, v4, and all that details, right? Next is an example of TCP, right? TCP packet, you can see at which state. So TCP is stateful, as you know, right? So there is an ACK, so there's a SYN, there's an ACK, there's a SYN ACK, and then we exchange information. So you can see different flags, at the packet. You can see that is this in the beginning, or in the end, or is it somewhere in the middle, right? Right, you can see the handshake. You can confirm that yes, my host talked to your host. How do I know? Well, I can see the full handshake, and then after that, you can see some information being exchanged, right? Or is it just a one-off thing? Visualization is quite useful. Also, right? So you can do a graph to see sequence of events or activities, right? For example, right? So I think this is one of the tools that you should be using today within Wireshark, right? So if you get a PCAP right away and you don't know what to do with it, then do the statistics, do the TCP follow stream, or do a flow graph, for example, just to understand how many hosts are we talking about in this PCAP, for example, right? Is it just one host, many hosts? What other protocols are there? So get some ideas about the PCAP itself. So there's a lot of tools for doing that. So this is a flow graph. So if you, let's say, so one of the useful tool with Wireshark is the follow TCP stream. So I think if you go to or watch any tutorial on YouTube on Wireshark, there's always this section where people say, all right, so let's play with follow TCP stream. So if the communication uses TCP, right? So one single packet is maybe one portion of the whole conversation, right? So we want to see the whole thing from beginning to end, and what information is being exchanged. For example, a web traffic, a web request, right? So I want to see what my computer asks, right? And I want to see what the browser respond, and I want to see how I responded again, and I want to see what the server responds. So that's follow TCP stream, right? And one of the interesting things about follow TCP stream is that it gives you the actual content as well in a more visible format. So you don't have to go through each packet to see the content, right? It puts things together for you so that you can have like a summary, right, of the conversation, right? So remember, follow TCP stream. You will be using this later on, right? RTP stream analysis. This is more for for audio video, so you can reproduce those things. Yeah, I guess the big thing about Wireshark, and this is where I guess it differentiates between a casual Wireshark user and an experienced Wireshark user, is the ability to make filters, right? To look for things using filter, right? So this takes practice, right? This takes playing with different kinds of packets or different kinds of scenario where you start thinking, how do I zoom in, right? So you have a lot of packets, right? A very big file, but you want to just find, let's say 3 hosts that is talking to my host, right? So this is where the power of filter comes in, and this is where the skill of a Wireshark user is being demonstrated, right? Between, like I said, a casual or a newbie and an experienced one, right? So in the exercise that we will be doing later on, you will see a lot of filters that are given to you. Like I said, okay, use this filter to search for these things. But don't be limited to that, right? You should ask questions like, what else can I search for? Well, how can I achieve the same result using another filtering technique, right? So this is it basically. When it comes to doing Wireshark analysis with Wireshark, it's about the filters, right? So keep that at the back of your mind. So with filters, what it means is that you must be familiar with the protocol, right? So if you are familiar with HTTP, then you know that, well, there could be maybe just two options for, getting the server to talk to me, right? One, it's a GET request or a POST request, right? So you can search. I just want to see if I sent anything to the server, so I should see only the POST, right? Or I just want to see all requests that is being made to the server, so I can search for GET and POST and things like that. So understanding that is very interesting, and Wireshark makes it easier, right? Because for each protocol, then it will have a field name. So I can say that, okay, show me packets, show me TCP packets where SYN is true, right? It's a SYN packet. Right? So just show me that. So I can specify, and then I can zoom into very specific packets. Okay, a bit more examples, right? Some more examples how you can do, the filtering. And again, this comes from practice. So those are some examples. Again, you don't have to memorize any of this because it's there. You can build the filter yourself, right? But I think if you use it a lot, then these things come naturally to you that you're looking for. Let's say I just want to know, anything related to a host, right? Or this whole network, right? Or source network, destination network, port number, right? Or a DNS. Right? So that's an example of doing filtering, right? And you can have things like booleans and things like that. Do this and not that, right? That type of thing. And it can be very specific and so on, right? So this is the power of Wireshark, and I think something that you should maybe try to exercise when you do the analysis, right? So last but not least is saving or manipulating packets. So one use case for this is that somebody gives you, a big file, a PCAP file of 1 gig. So this is all the PCAP that I have, right? If you're doing analysis, you don't want to be loading this 1 gig file every time, right? So there's something that you look for specifically. So for example, I just want to look any traffic going to the victim machine or off the victim machine. So I identify that the victim machine is, 1.1.1.1, for example, right? So I filter for that. I save that in another file, right? So now I'm working with a much smaller file, right? And it's more practical. So I don't have to load 1 gig every time. I just load, maybe 10 megabytes, right? So less noise, less garbage. So you can actually, be very focused, right? So one of the exercise, I gave you exactly that. I give you a big file, and you have to filter and make it more convenient. Or you can still load that one big file, but it's just not convenient to me, right? So it's not effective. So you can save it in another file and play with that instead. You can export to CSV, right? Sometimes you have a need for this, just a summary, right? And with the CSV, you can open it in Excel if you want to play with it. So just, options for sharing information, right? Statistics is another feature that is quite interesting. So given a PCAP file, what are we looking at here? So statistic is in a tool section that you can play with, right? So here it says that, well, there's a lot of TCP packets and 32% is HTTP, right? So we know that we're dealing with a bunch of web traffic. Conversation, this is useful. Who's talking to who, when, right? How many packets being sent back and forth, right? Gives you some idea, like, is there a file transfer happening? Did I just downloaded something? Right. I think we mentioned already about the I/O graph, right? And a lot of this stuff are actually configurable, so we won't be doing that much of this today, but I just want to highlight that this is some of the interesting things that you can play with, right? TCP Streamcraft, RTT, right? So stuff like that. So we won't be using any of this today, I think, not in our stuff. Okay. Last but not least, a very fancy feature. Well, not fancy. I'm just joking. So you can color the packets as well. Maybe you want to highlight things. So this is like writing notes, right? Highlighting a Word document for key things, right? So you can do that as well in Wireshark, right? So you don't have to take the default. That's what I mean, right? So you can say that, I just want to see the web traffic or DNS query, and I want to make it really obvious. So you can say, make it pink, because pink is my favorite color, for example. So you can do that. And sometimes when you are looking at this thing long enough, your eyes get very sore, right? So it's probably useful to make things a bit more interesting, right? By colorizing the packets, right? So color all the TLS connections and all that. All good. So that's a very quick run through of what we are looking at in terms of the tools, right? So we have not really used it yet for our class, but highlighting some key features that you will be using or might be useful today when you are doing the analysis. Any questions so far about the tool? I hope I don't get that many questions yet because we have not done really anything. Maybe some ideas, right? So, yeah, does it look exciting, this Wireshark? Any hardcore TCP dump user who says, I will never use Wireshark because it's GUI? Anyone in this room like that? No? But TCP dump has its use, very, very practical, especially for capturing things where I don't need to look at the GUI, right? But I think for analysis, maybe you need something like Wireshark, a bit more visual, right? A bit more easy on the eyes as well, especially those who are aging like me, right? So it used to be just look at command lines, everything is there. I can pick up things easily, but now tools like this is very, very practical and useful, and you can reproduce a lot of interesting results. And like I said, there's a community behind it that is always improving the tool. So that's what I like about it. Okay, so I think that will just take us to the first coffee break of the day. How long do you want to go for a break? 15 minutes, maybe? 15 is good, I think, I think if we can start early, then we will have less risk of not finishing the lab. So, and it's good if you finish earlier, like I said. And I think today is Friday, so we have to stop a bit early, Paruli. What time should we stop? Yeah, for lunch break and the Friday break. 11:30. Okay. All right. So the next break is at 11:30. Sounds good. So let's go for 15-minute coffee break and then come back as soon as possible so that we can get started on the first lab exercise. Thank you. And one thing, please remind me that we should all do a group photo at some point today. Maybe before lunch or after lunch. So we have evidence that we are here. So picture or it didn't happen, right? Finish. Hi.
I can't take it from this.
You can copy?
I can't.
You can't, right? It
I
says error.
am not recognized.
Oh, okay. Maybe there's another one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. All right. Analyzing packets, network packets. So on the network, there's a lot of packets traveling to different places. So Wireshark can be used to analyze capture packets. So if you are able to capture the packets, you can take the packet, which is a file, and load it into Wireshark.
This is the activity bank is already exists in the notebook, right?
No, so you have to somehow capture the packets first. So there are many ways to capture packets. One is you can use Wireshark for that. Or, okay, so we will do that in our exercise. Right? Yeah, so after our income for break, then you can see how we can capture packets. Then, so Wireshark can be used, or there are some other tools like TCP down. Moloch, so there are many tools for capturing packets. So once we have the packet, then we can use it for analysis.
So the first thing we have to do is just make sure that we have already have this,
Yeah.
and then we do the entire analysis
Yes, yeah.
with the Wireshark.
With Wireshark. Yeah.
The Wireshark also we need not only for the analysis but also to
Capture.
capture the data.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No problem. Yeah.
Terima kasih, Cik.
Yeah.
Do you have time basically?
So Wireshark is to do analysis. Wireshark, if it's encrypted, realize you can decrypt it, but yeah. Normally, it will not be that because if you decrypt IP, then I don't know where to send the packet. So generally encrypted is we have a you can VPN devices. Yeah. Encrypted, how do you? Iyalah, itulah kalau dia akan encrypt dia search dia. Cuma kalau yang bahaya
Yang sampai
konten ataupun kalau macam VPN tu dia encapsulate endpoint punya IP. So kita nampak daripada VPN server ni ke sini saja. Dan VPN server ni nanti dia akan buka balik baru nampak show paket tu ke PC ni ke IP. Ya. Itu. Sebab itu fundamental routing kan.
Ya.
Maknanya kita kena nampak at least to send it to next format. That's kalau macam paket tu just a local network. Yang jadi ini bukan MAC address. So just make sure. Okay. No problem. Pause. Ya. Oh, there is another. Okay. Ya. Tapi besar tu.
Kita copy di Google Drive. You finish? No. Ya, terima kasih.
Okay. Okay. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think we just get started. Yeah. All right. So. Okay. So to warm up, right? To warm up, let's look at some attack examples. So yesterday, Mr. Ferry talked about honeypots, honey nets. So I want to show you maybe one or two attack sessions. So just for us to get warmed up about what to look for when we are looking into the PCAPs. Okay. But let me explain a little bit what we are going to be looking at. So we are going to look at an attack on a honeypot that is called actually Kipo, which is now it's called Kawi, like the newer version, but the one that I have running here is called Kipo. So it opens port 22, and then attacker will attempt to connect to it to get in, and Kipo will then give a shell for attacker to then execute commands on it, right? So I want to look at this not from the attacker's perspective, but from the defender's perspective. What can we learn about before the attack, during the attack, and after the attack, right? Pre, during, post, right? Because as an analyst, you have to be able to answer what happened before, what happened during, what happened after, right? So where it came from, so additional question, where did the attack comes from? How did attacker get in? So I can tell you right away that with Kauri or Kipo, it's brute force, right? Getting username and password, and then finding the one that we allow attacker to come in. And then what was the actual payload? So once attacker comes in, what did the attacker do, right? Was the payload somewhere else, right? What kind of system was it targeting? So I mean, there are other questions that you can do this. So as I said earlier, before, during, and after the attack, right? So for this exercise, I want you to go to this URL or the URL on your slide. Do you see that URL? So first you can download the slides here, right? And in my slide, I have a link, jp.fsck.my/viz. Hopefully the network is working. Can you go to the link? Yeah. jp.fsck.my/viz. Can you raise your hand if you are on the website already? Okay, so the website exists. All right. So on the website, look for where it says play log. Can you see play log at the top? Play log. Okay. So as an exercise, if you are on that play log page, I want you to look at, so there are many sessions there. I want you to look at session 2, 39, and 81. Right? 2, 39, and 81. All right, I'll come back to this slide. I just want to pose you the question again. Sorry, someone was taking a picture. You can take picture again. So for each session, I want you to understand. I want you to answer the following question: where did the attack came from? Skip the how the attacker get in because the attacker already got in. What was the actual payload? And what kind of system was it targeting? Yeah. Timeout. Can anyone load? Yeah. Okay. I'll give you maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes to look at 239 and 81. 239 and 81. And if you have extra time, you can look at the rest. But look at 239 and 81. And in about 4 minutes from now, I will start asking you questions. Okay? So one good habit of a security analyst or incident responder is you always have a pen and paper somewhere for you to write notes. Right? Because you're going to forget things unless you're going to type it in your notepad or somewhere else. Right? So when we are observing, we are taking notes. Right? Anything interesting, write it down because otherwise you will forget. You're going to be looking at so much information, so many files, so many artifacts. You think you will remember everything, right? And then you realize that after 10 minutes, you're confused. What was the IP address again? What was the domain name? So you keep on going back and wasting time, right? So have a pen and pencil ready, paper, take notes, right? So because in your mind, you are answering some questions. Where did the attack came from? What did the attacker do? Any additional information that you see, right? And maybe you think of, okay, maybe I want to know this information, but I don't think it's there. I have a question about this, right? So that's why we make it a habit when we're performing all this analysis, and we try to jot things down as they come across our minds. All right, 3 more minutes, yeah. So we are looking at this link, and everybody is trying to analyze 239 and 81. So I guess those who are following remotely, can they ask a question? The remote participant, can they ask a question, or the remote participant, can they ask a question to you, or can they send a message? Or no, I mean, I'm just asking. If they have question, maybe they can send it to you or text you. I don't know. Or we assume that they're all good. All right. Or you can send me an email. Those who are following remotely, maybe you can send me an email or don't send me a message on Facebook. Somebody just sent me a message on Facebook. I'm not checking my Facebook right now. So if you send my email, adli@apnic.net, then maybe I can see your question. I'll answer it. Okay. So everyone, I've looked at 239 and 81. Yeah. Okay. Can someone volunteer to answer? Like, what are you seeing in session 2? What are you seeing there? How can we describe what's taking place? What is happening there? Anyone wants to give a try? So attacker is downloading a zip file after they get in. Okay, what tool did they use to download a file? wget. Wget is what? You assume that I don't know anything about security, or like I pretend to be CEO, right? Who makes a lot of money, but not. So what is wget? Okay, so it's a tool for downloading something. How did that tool exist on the host? Is it there by default, or the attacker installed it? You think it's by default? Yeah, wget by default. Okay, so attacker downloaded something from where? What is the location? Okay, let me load this. One sec. Let's take a look. I'm not sure. Probably have to reload the page, or maybe not. We cannot scroll. Oh, now it's slow. Let me see. Maybe I have. Oh no, you can't do it. Too many connections? Hang on. Just give me 1 minute. Let me check something. Somebody hacked it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so if you look up here, WCAT. So do you think this is a human attacker or a bot? Why do you say it's a human attacker? There's maybe some other hints. Do you see any typo, making any typos? So installing a software, right? So if you look at this, right, you should be asking a lot of questions, right? You should be asking a lot of questions, especially if you're seeing this for the first time, right? If you're seeing this for the first time, you should be taking notes, right? So let's follow, let's try to think on what happened, right? So first, so we are presented with this like a replay of an attack, right? So the data was captured from the logs of the honeypot, so we can show it, like a replay of what just happened. So initially you see, download, right? WCAT. Did you see the attacker trying who checking who's online? Did you see that? Right. WCAT. So WCAT is very interesting here because then it tells me the attacker is pulling something from a different location, right? Remember earlier I spoke about infrastructure, attacker's infrastructure. Where else are they storing their stuff? Where do they store their things? Where's their name server? Where's their, where's the host that they stash? They're finding the tools and things like that, right? So I have the location, right? I have the domain name, which was .ro or something, right? Anything interesting about the URL? Do you see anything interesting about the URL? Anyone able to know what the URL is? Do you have the full URL? Let me see. rapstyle.ro, right? Rapstyle. Alright. So it's a .ro. Where is RO? What country is that? RO. Romania, right? So I think those who are doing research in cybersecurity or cybercrime, when you say Romania or Ukraine or in some countries, you're like, interesting, right? Do you think that this host has been compromised or a server that the attacker actually registered? So if I ask you, do you know? In most cases, you don't know, right? Because we don't know, right? So those are all assumptions. We don't know yet. We don't know the picture, but those are questions, right? Did the attacker register this domain name and then use it on his server, or is this server does it belong to a user whose website has been compromised, right? And now he is storing his tool, right? So we saw the tool. BNC, right? tar, GZ, right? So downloads this on Torrent, and then question is, what tool is that, right? So the RIC generation knows what it is, yeah? So we are in the same group, so don't worry, we are in the same group. So what we don't see is what happened if that tool was installed successfully. What happens to the server? Do we see any outbound connection? We don't see that in this video, for example, right? But we have pieces of information. So we see attacker untarring, right, and then CD into the folder, try to execute it, and then doing some error, L space S dash A, right, instead of typing LS minus, A, for example. The last step there is also very interesting, RMRF, right? Panic mode, remove everything, right, and exit, right? So what I wanted to show you here is that there are interesting stuff just by looking at that, additional information that we get by observation, right? There's a lot of questions still that we have not answered. Where did the attacker come from? It doesn't say here, right? It might be in the logs, right? It might be in the logs. And if you had a PCAP of this session, you probably will see that, right? And then we can make some conclusion. Is the source of the attack the same as the location of where the goods are being stored? Or is it separate location? Attacker attacked from one place and then store his stuff in another place, go in, download, execute, leave, right? So is that it? So that's the question that we would like to answer, right? And unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the complete picture until we have all the artifacts. Okay, let's look at the next one. The next one should be a little bit more interesting, which is, what was the number? Was it 39? 39. What can you say about 39? Anyone would like to try? What can you say about that attack? 39. Anything interesting that you observe? So you must focus, right? Look at the data, look at the stuff. Is there anything interesting about 39 that is kind of different from number 2? Anyone wants to try? What's different about 39? What's interesting? Okay, hang on, let me load this and I will go to you. Take note of the URL. You will not remember by watching, you will remember by writing, right? So everybody's just looking, you cannot, right? So what's interesting about the URL, right? Take note of that. Okay, so a couple of things interesting here. So pointed out by Mr. Ferry. What was the first thing that the attacker tried to do? Stop that. Why would they do that? Why would they stop the firewall? Right? So maybe to avoid any inconvenience, right? In case they're trying to download something and then the firewall is blocking. And if you look at the URL, you'll know exactly why this person does that. What was the port number? What was it? Was it? So if you look at the URL, right? So the technique is different. Go in, download something from somewhere, and run this tool that they just have downloaded, right? But the only interesting, one of the interesting things about this URL is that it says that the server is listening on port 218, right? So the web server is listening on port 80, right? And therefore, that could be one of the reasons why the firewall was disabled, because maybe the owner of the server had only allowed, outbound 80 or 443, whatever, right? So to avoid any inconvenience, then stop everything. Why not? Because you can, right? And download the tools, right? And where was it downloaded? It's downloaded in /10, right? Is it /10 or CD/10, right? So as an analyst, we know that's one of the favorite locations for storing, things temporarily, because that's probably one of the places that we don't look at. But from this information, we know. So download, change mode, and then try to execute. Nothing happens because it is a honeypot, and leaves. Okay. One last example. What was the number? 81, isn't it? Is that the last one? So, anything interesting in that one? Anybody want to try? What's interesting in 81? I think the section here has been a bit quiet. Anyone? Nobody wants to establish the screen. Anyone from this group? 81. What can you say about 81? Anything interesting? When you look at it, you say, what is interesting? Or you look at it, what's going on here? So you. Sorry? Okay. Something to do with data. Yeah, Mr. Ferry is giving us a hint. In that session 81, there's something to do with name server. What's going on there? So sometimes when you look at things, you may not have the answer, but you should have questions. Right? So I think that's the basic of becoming an analyst. You should have questions. But if you look at something and it doesn't interest you, then maybe you're in the wrong profession. Okay. 81. What is interesting in 81? Name server. Okay. Okay, now it's slow again, but let's see. Somebody blocked my. Okay, so what's interesting in 81? Name server. Change the name resolution, right? To what? Do you see anything?
Google.
To Google address? 8.8.8. And then anything interesting about the URL? The URL. What port? Is it port 80? Oh, let me see, it's too fast. So let's have a look at it. So it's the same, right? It seems the same, but what about the file name? Is it the same file name or a different file name? Previous example, it's different, right? The URL is the same, right? IP address is the same, port number is the same, but the file is different, right? In the previous one, because I didn't write it down, right? Previous one, it was like 10 something. This is bash_root, right? So that's how we have to write things, because then we say, oh, it's same URL, but different files, right? So taking notes is very important. I think that's lesson number 1 before playing with Moisture, right? Change mode, try to execute. And there is also a stop firewall, right? IP table stop. Do you guys see this? Right? It's probably in the script. Try to stop firewall. Previous one, stopping firewall, but attacker assumed that it's a SUSE Linux box for whatever reason. Right? So you can see, right? Number 1, activities of an attacker, and it gives you some ideas on what to look for actually, right? When you are looking in a PCAP, right? So you're looking for, okay, what initiates the initial transaction, what happens during, what happens after, what happens in between, right? So you have all these questions. So you may get that answer in the PCAP or you may not, right? But by looking at things like this, it should create more questions, right? So can we say that the attacker have different tools depending on what this person is attacking, right? Because on one host, same location where he was downloading stuff, he or she, we don't know the attacker's gender, never assume, right? Same location, URL is the same, but downloading 2 different files, right? So I operate this honeypot, so I have a copy of that file, right? So I can actually scan it, look inside it, maybe it's a script and whatnot, right? So I can probably have more details because now I know when this file is executed, right? It is going to be doing something, maybe initiate some outbound connection, or maybe install more tools or whatever, right? So I have a bit more questions. So this is just maybe at the tip of the iceberg for us to understand what is going on in a particular attack. Any question about this? Any question about what we are looking at the moment? Right? So answering question is very, very important, right? So as you can imagine, if you're doing an analysis on attacks on, in this particular case, maybe Linux-based systems, right? So you are very excited and you said, oh, I have all this attack that I've collected, I've analyzed them, I've looked at them, and then people kind of come back to you, so what's your advice, right? So from the information that you have collected, those are interesting, but what's your advice, right? What are the practical advice for me to, number one, detect attacks like this, and number two, even before detecting, prevent attacks like this from happening, right? Do you have any advice for me? So I think this is where sometimes analysts go deep into their thing and then they forget about the part where actually people just want advice. Like in 3 words, what do you want me to do, right? So you might be excited about all this URL, fancy port number and things like that, but really, in three bullets, what's your advice? What should I be doing to prevent attacks like this from happening? And if the attack like this happens on my network, how do I detect it, right? So practical advice, that's something else that we have to think about when we are doing some analysis. And I guess the other thing is that when you look at attacks like this, you can see some common pattern, right? So the steps or the framework that attackers use, right, if we can use that word, is very generic, right? Number one is getting in, right? So I get in. Number two, I pull my stuff from somewhere and execute it on your machine, right? That's basically the payload. They may do some other things in between, right? But you can see also that while on the host, attacker tries, in this case not that hard, but try to hide its presence, right? Trying to see who's online, right? Tries to delete stuff, right, from the host before exiting. So we kind of expect that these are some of the actions that they will take. Whether or not they will do it is something else, right? And I think the more and more you deal with incidents, you get to see this pattern, right? That they're trying to hide things in certain folders. They're trying, how they try to rename their files, right? How do they get in? How do they exit? And all of that. So all of this, there's a common story in a lot of this incident, right? So that's a bit of warming up, right? And I guess maybe the last thing that I keep on mentioning is ask questions, right? Things should be intriguing, right? So, side B and C, what is that, right? So, or where can I get the answers? So knowing where to go to get more answers is also very practical when it comes to this. Any questions so far? No? Okay, so a quick story about that URL that I gave you. That's from a honeypot that was run in a month, right? So all of that sessions came from that one single honeypot. And if you have time, just go through it. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them are so kind of lame. But if you were to run honeypots today, right, you will see different kinds of attack, right? So I can set up exactly the same honeypot with SSH turned on and telnet, right? And I can see slightly different type of attacks. I think more automated. You see less and less all the manual stuff. All automated and and targeting very specific system. All right. You have these slides, but because you cannot see it here, so sometimes by looking at logs alone or traffic alone will not give you the complete picture, right? So you have to look at this, in this particular case, the source code, right? So we have the source code and we can actually see what password combination was being used to enter a system, right? So this is from a different attack, not the attack that you saw just now. But all this evidence and artifacts, help you build a bigger picture of the attack, and you have more information, right? Yes.
I have a question related to the honeypot.
Yeah.
As previously you showed that there's video plays, and how do we know that that's a real attack? Sometimes because if I'm a hacker, I can assume that I know that it's honeypot,
Mhm.
and I can make a fake attack.
Yeah.
So the target can be assumed that okay, this is the real attack, or how can we differentiate?
I think you can differentiate by looking at certain characteristics, but you cannot make this decision right away, right? So anything that comes to my honeypot, I can assume, I can say that, okay, these are all potentially malicious attacks because my honeypot, no one knows about it. Like I've never announced it to the world. I put it on the internet, and anything that comes to it, I can assume to be potentially malicious, right? Whether or not the attacker knows that he or she is in a honeypot, that's a second question. Because I don't know, maybe the attacker is just playing, right? So, and we can see that in some of the attacks, attacker actually tests a couple of things, right? To make sure that this is a legit system, not a honeypot. If it's a honeypot, they will leave right away and not waste time, and probably will blacklist you. So next time, no one comes to you anymore, right? So there is that as well. But I think it's hard to tell unless we watch closely what is going on. And sometimes randomly we can get people logging in by accident and then trying a few things. Maybe they don't have any malicious intention, but it's hard to say, because when we look at attacks, we are looking at it from one angle. We don't know who's behind the attack, right? It could be a dog that is doing this, right? On his home, the master went to work and he started typing. You don't know. You can't tell. And just because I have an IP address or a domain name, I cannot say that, oh, this is from Indonesia. These are Indonesian hackers, right? It could be someone else, proxying through some connectivity. So it's hard to be conclusive. What I can be conclusive about are based on things that I have, right? I can say that, yes, this person downloaded something from that host and tried to execute it. I can see it in the logs. Now I have a sample, I can scan it, I can check whether or not it's malicious. I can be conclusive on that evidence. But the rest, I'm just assuming, right? So any other question? Okay, so I think now it's time for some Wiresharking. So the first lab is an exercise. Like I said, this is a guided workshop, so you have to do it yourself. I'll give you some time to do it. But before we go into this, in this particular example, we are going to be looking at an attack. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to start capturing packets, right? So we want to capture an attack that is happening on the server side, right? And in this particular attack, and you have to run the attack yourself on the virtual machine, right? The attack exploit a vulnerability in Bash, right? So if you've been using Linux or Unix, this is a big deal because this is a shell that we use every day, and it has a vulnerability, right? And it could be exploited remotely through an internet-based application, right? So this was out there in 2014, and people realized quickly that it was not just servers that was affected by this, right? A lot of appliances that we use, especially security appliances, are essentially Linux machines, right? And they have this vulnerability, right? And sometimes you'll find that until now, a lot of scans to look for, computers or servers with Bash vulnerabilities and try to execute some script on it. So for our setup, we are going to use Apache as a means to talk to Bash on a host. And issue some commands to it. And you can see how simple it is. Okay. Okay, so before we go, can I have confirmation that all of you managed to load the OVA? Yeah? With the virtual machine, VirtualBox? Okay, if not, I will go around very quickly. So let's look at the virtual machine very quickly, and then we do the exercise. me see. One sec. Right. Okay, so so in a nutshell, this is a very simple virtual machine. It's got only a couple of tools installed on it. As you see, it has Wireshark, it's got a Firefox, and a terminal. So this is all you need, basically. A lot of the PCAPs are in /data, right? So I'm kind of assuming that you know some Unix commands, right? Linux. If not, then I'll go around or ask your neighbor, right? So a lot of the PCAPs are here. So you will see that in some of the examples, some of the folder names will be mentioned, and that's where you go to fetch the data. So it's there. In most cases, you don't have to use a command line at all for this next few steps. Sorry about that. Let's go back to the desktop. So then there's Wireshark. So in a lot of cases, right? In a lot of cases, for today's class at least, in most cases, what you will be asked to do is open a PCAP in Wireshark, right? So that's file, open, right? And you select a folder, right? So let's say this file, that will PCAP, and just load it inside Wireshark. Okay, so that's what you have to do in most cases. However, I think there's one exercise, maybe the next one, where you will actually have to record or capture packets, right? So this is where either you click on the shark fin, right, for live capture, right? So you capture live based on the interface. In our case, we do the listening on the internal interface. So we say, click on capture live. Okay. So start capturing. So we run Wireshark, and then we issue the commands, and Wireshark will start capturing stuff, right? So let me repeat. In most cases, what we're going to do is just open a file inside Wireshark. Maybe for one or two exercise, the instruction will say that run Wireshark first, execute some commands, and see what packets are being captured. right? So two methods of analysis: loading an existing PCAP or run Wireshark live on the interface for you to do the analysis, right? So I have to say this because sometimes people are confused, like, oh, what am I supposed to do, right? So now I'm telling you what you're supposed to do, right? And the first rule is don't panic, right? Something doesn't work, raise your hand, I will come and help. Okay, all good. So that's your virtual machine. So if you have that running, then I think we can start the lab. So where do you get the lab? You go to the Google Drive. There is a lab folder, and find the closest file name to this one. I think I named it something else, but the word shell shock is still there, right? Download that file from the Google Drive, and then go through the instructions bit by bit, right? In previous experience, I think people spend about half an hour doing that exercise, right? With some questions. So you do take your time for about half an hour or so, complete, and then we have a quick discussion on what you are seeing, what you are playing with. So this exercise is a bit tricky because it involves you running some commands on the terminal to simulate the exploit, right? And then finally you do some analysis with Wireshark. Any question before we get started? All right, so I think the best approach to this is start going through the document and see if you're good or if you get stuck, right? Anyone cannot find this file? Let me know, right? And I'll come to you guys. I'll go around. Actually, what you can also do is access Google Drive from the VM. Because if you want to cut and paste, if you have it on your machine and then on the host, it could be a bit tricky. So you can open Firefox and go to Google Drive from your VM and then copy the documents. I think they should have OpenOffice in that folder. So did everybody manage to execute the exploit? Yeah, using curl at least. Yeah. Did you guys manage to do the Firefox example? There was in the exercise there is a so the first attempt is to use curl to find the vulnerability. The second example use Firefox. It says load Firefox, but use the switch agent. Okay, let me give you a demo quickly. Where this is. So if you open Firefox, And it says default user agent. You see that? So you click here. We have a profile called Shell Shock, right? And then if you reload this page, you should get the etc password file, right? So the first step, the first thing that we ask you to do is use curl. It gives the same result, right? So we'll talk about the attack later on, but I just want to clarify what it means when it says, use Firefox to load the page with the switch user agent browser. Okay, where is everyone at the moment? Are you in the Wireshark section or are you still playing with the terminal? Anybody who have reached the Wireshark analysis section? Not yet? Still already there? Okay. You're gonna stop. You have to stop. Okay. And what time will you continue?
1:30.
1:30.
After lunch. After.
So after Friday we go for lunch right away.
And 1:30 we come back in here.
Okay. All right. Can they leave the things here or do you have to bring?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Okay, guys. I was asked to announce that we have to stop now. But if you need to go to the Friday prayers, Jumu'ah prayer, and then we come back here after lunch at 1:30. That's when we get restarted. Okay? If you finish lunch early, try to finish this exercise because then we come back, we have a quick discussion. We go to exercise number 2. All right? And I was told that it's safe to leave your things here. All right? So for people who are following us remotely, see you in a few minutes.
Untuk sholat Jumatnya Bapak ada di lantai 2 ya, di ruang langit. Jadi untuk sholat Jumat kita bersama-sama di lantai 2.
Okay.